to Peninsula Seniors Out and About. Today we're at Palos Verdes Golf Course, right in the heart of Palos Verdes for the 23rd Annual Concours d'Elegance. The theme this year is Automotive Standards of the World. The featured cars are Cadillac, Darren, and Ferrari. Let's go have a look at some of the cars. I'm here with Brian Ray and this amazing Cadillac. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, sure, Betty. This is car number 424 out of 704 Cadillac Eldorado Bromes built over 1957 and 1958. This particular car is being shown today and judged in preservation class because it is an original car, 100% original, now just recommissioned so that all systems are working. And what can I say? It's an all options car from Cadillac, and everything in the car is complete. The only thing left to the buyer to choose was the color and the interior combinations.
How did you happen on this car?
I had a 30-year obsession with this car. I first saw it in 1983 and knew that one day I would get one of these cars. And so finally, just last year, I found this car. It was online, and it's a California car that had been living in Dallas for about 10 years, but not running and not registered in Dallas.
What's the mileage?
41,000 original miles, yeah. Yeah.
Well, tell us how you acquired it.
Well, so I was put onto the car by a friend of mine who's a specialist in the Cadillac Eldorado Brome, a guy named Rick Zeiger. And he said, Brian, go online. There's one that's much better than the ones you've been looking at, and it's complete. When a car is this rare, you want one as complete as possible because it's less stuff to find, and the parts are more rare than the cars are, to be honest with you. Now, I found the car, I saw the bidding was going up on it, and so I contacted the seller, Peter Krell, and I offered him a good offer, and then he was humming and hawing, and I said, Peter, how about I include 4 tickets to come see me play with Paul McCartney in Dallas?
That took it over the top.
That took it over the top. Then he was in. And so it was great because I got to see Peter Krell, the guy who sold it to me, and the last owner, a guy named Lee Celio. And we had a good time at the Paul McCartney show.
How long have you been with Paul McCartney?
I've been playing with Paul McCartney for going on 14 years now.
Wow.
Yeah.
What an awesome job.
It's a great opportunity. He's a great guy, and we have a fabulous time together, traveling the world.
Well, thank you for bringing the Cadillac to the Concours today, and can you give us a walk around, up close and personal?
Sure will. Thanks, Betty. This is car number 424, 1958 Cadillac Eldorado Brome, which was designed by the great Harley Earl of Corvette fame and GM fame. It was first presented at the 1956 Motorama as a concept car, and it went over so well that they said, let's go into production, a low production number. They only made 704 of these cars over 2 years' time, and this is number 424. If you'll see with the grille, the whole car appears a lot lower than the other Cadillac models of 57 and 58. That's because it is a lot lower. It's about 4 or 5 inches lower in profile than the Sedan DeVille and the Biarritz and the Eldorado. And you'll notice its prominent Dagmars, they called them. Dagmar, of course, was an actress who was known for her prodigious personality. This car features a nice pair of incredible Dagmars, all original. This original chrome coming around the car. These are aluminum alloy wheels, which are cast and not a normal wheel with a hubcap. Instead, this is a whole wheel. There's aluminum and chromed with a hubcap over the bolts. You see the badge, you see the antenna still working. The Eldorado Brome was the only car featured at that time with what they called suicide doors, and that is 4 doors, 2 of which open from the middle on each side and open outwards. Better known on a Continental in 63, but this was an early feature and an outstanding feature of the Eldorado Brome. The Brome also featured air ride suspension, which was a complicated but a beautiful system that kept the car riding on. It's like a marshmallow riding on springs. It's like a cloud, and this is a fully restored original air ride system. So I'm going to demonstrate for you today the suicide doors as I was just talking about a minute ago. We'll start with the back one. in the front. Let me just show you around a little bit. Here is a full complement of what they called vanity items that were placed in the front glove compartment and the rear armrest. One thing about the Cadillac Brougham is it was an all options car. The only thing for the buyer to choose would be the colors and the interior colors and materials. This car is called a Maharani Maroon. It's one of 4 in 1958 original Maharani Maroon cars. It's a rare color. And we're going to look inside the glove compartment here so you can see some of the goodies that each of these cars came with, including a cigarette holder for guys, a plastic cigarette box for your pack of cigarettes, a tissue dispenser, a ladies' compact with a mirror, comb, room for more cigarettes for her, and a powder puff and lipstick. And most interestingly, it included 6 stainless steel magnetic shot glasses. What could go wrong? Alcohol in cars. Well, anyway, here they are displayed in the glove compartment. You'll see the base of this is magnetized steel, and the bottom of each of the shot glasses is magnetized to fit on there so that you won't spill your drink while you're driving, of course. And as I was saying, in the rear armrest, there are a few other items. There's a leather-backed mirror. There's a notebook with a pad of paper in it and an original Sterling Cross mechanical pencil included. It still has the original paper on the pad in it. Behind that, for her, you'll see Arpège Lanvin perfume set in its original display box and its atomizer, which is near impossible to find, and a full bottle and its production case from Arpège. Okay, so we're back and talking about the interior here. As I said, it's a all options in car, but you could choose the materials. This particular car has original white leather interior with a gray lining around it, and it has original gray sheepskin mouton carpeting in nearly perfect condition, which is very rare. So there you see, it looks like something out of Dean Martin's living room, and it comes to you from California, the great Cadillac Eldorado Brougham. So we've moved around now to the rear of the car, where you'll see the original cast aluminum bumpers. It was really a 3-piece set, left and right bumper, and a license plate surround, giving you a full body reveal on each side of the license plate. Kind of crazy thing they did was they led the exhaust through the bumper, thinking that was a good idea, but of course it melted most bumpers, as it has my old original car. Here is a more subdued idea of the Cadillac fins that were later to explode into giant dimensions in 59 and 60. From the driver's point of view, this was a remarkable car featuring some options that were very futuristic for 1957-58. First time ever on a Brougham, a 3-position memory seat, and this still remembers how to work. Of course, power windows all the way around, even the vent is powered. An automatic dimmer so that your lights would automatically go too bright if there was no oncoming traffic at night, and would switch to normal if there was oncoming traffic. It's got full air, full heat, as I said before, air ride suspension, and this carpeting, if you take your shoes off, you're in heaven. It's sheepskin. So here you are, car number 424, the Eldorado Brougham, 1958.
I'm here with Tom Sumner and this Packard Darren. What an amazing car. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yes, it's a replica of a car I once owned. It was designed by Dutch Darren for a friend of his, a movie actor, Errol Flynn. I sold it back in 1951. It disappeared. I was never able to find it again. So I visited with Dutch Darren at his home and told him of my plan of reproducing it. And he said that good luck. But he gave me one of his small Darren of Paris medallions to put on the car, which I did, if I ever constructed it. So I had done this really for my own wants because I missed the original car. And I didn't know it would be so attractive to the Darren community because it was the last car that Dutch Darren designed. And the Packard people built no convertibles after the war, so it's the only Clipper convertible in the world.
Well, can you give us an up close and personal look at this beautiful car?
The original car was purchased from a used car lot in Santa Monica, and the title was still in Errol Flynn's name. When I bought the car from the fellow that got it down there, I had the title photostated, so I have replicas of the title. I've reproduced the original license plate that was on the title, and then I reproduced the car with everything that I could remember about it. The grille is out of the original car. I had replaced it with a later model grille because it matched the side plate. So I saved this grille, fortunately, and used it in this replica. When Darren was working with Packard, he designed the Clipper. The Clipper design that he did had the front fender running all the way back, but Packard didn't like that, so they had it fade out in the door. So when he designed this car, he used his original idea of running the front fender all the way back to the rear. Darren had three things that he did to all of his designs. He lengthened the hood, 45-degree windshield, and sway door. The original Packard design for Clipper in 41 was only four-door sedans. So Darren had to construct this car as a two-door convertible out of a four-door sedan. Well, modifying a four-door sedan into a two-door convertible was a tremendous operation. It involved changing the contour of many of the body panels to make them fit, like the trunk lid. It had to be widened out and expanded. But the fellow that did the coach work on the car for me was quite good. And he managed to make everything fit and look right. Well, the dashboard, of course, is not a 41, it's a 47 because the car was constructed of a 47. But the dashboard is much more likable than the original 41. This car also incorporates the folding down passenger seat. I think that was a Flynn requirement. The top is a three-position top, either in the DeVille position with the front section on it or down. This is the Packard 356 straight 8 Super 8 engine, fitted with twin carburation as the original car was. It incorporates all of the mechanical features the original car had. It's a not fast turning engine, but a very powerful one and remarkably smooth. It's a proper marriage between the chassis and the engine. It's like an armchair for motoring down the road gently.
I'm here with Phillip Jelinek and this amazing car behind us here. Can you tell us a little bit of the history?
Yes, Henry J. Kaiser, who helped design this car, was an industrialist, and in the 1930s he was the main contractor for Hoover Dam. They told him it couldn't be done because the concrete wouldn't cure for over 100 years. So he developed a cooling system to allow it to cure in a few years. Then, a little bit later on during World War II, he built Liberty boats on an assembly line basis, and they said, well, you can't build boats on an assembly line basis, and of course he proved them wrong. And he's more, he believed in the adage, the difficult we do immediately, the impossible takes a little longer. And so when he was leaving World War II, he was looking into the automobile. So he partnered with Joe Frazier and developed the Kaiser Frazier Club, Kaiser Frazier Company, and developed a line of automobiles. And the one you see behind here is an example, a very nice example of the design. And he partnered with Howard Dutch Darren, which is what's being highlighted here. And Dutch Darren did the design. He was kind of at the end of his designing career. He's a coach builder in the 20s, 30s, and 40s. So he partnered with Kaiser, and this original design was built in 1951. So if you look at other 51 cars, they don't have as much chrome. They don't have as much what I call panache.
Panache. I love it.
So, I mean, these just sparkle. People go, I've never seen this car before. It looks so modern. It really does compared, being an early 51 car.
Can you show us some of the features?
All right, one of the characteristics that highlights this car being designed by Howard Dutch Darren is the Darren dip. He puts a lot of those characteristics in his cars. This is called a sweetheart windshield, and the Darren dip is part of that, and it makes this car unique. And also, if you know what to look for, you can find this in the stainless steel trim here by the window. Again, is the Darren dip. One of the other features of this car is what's known as an air conditioner. This is actually a swamp cooler. It's made for the southwest part of the United States. It works much better in a dry climate or desert climate because it's a swamp cooler. Air comes in here. We fill water up in here. There's a fill mark here that won't let you fill higher than this level. There are two cords in here. We turn the element to get it wet. Air comes through here, cools the air, and it cools the inside. So it works fairly well in a very dry climate. If it's humid, it doesn't work at all. This is called a Traveler, and the Traveler is basically two big cars in one. It's a normal sedan. When the back end is closed up, it looks like a normal car. With the back seat up, it goes anywhere in style because of all the chrome that's on here. If you need it, if you're a sportsman, if you're a merchant, a farmer, or anybody, a camper, you can go off and use this, put the back seat down, and you have basically the first hatchback. The deluxe model, this is a deluxe model, came with wood slats to make things easier to push on and take off. Another part that I like to highlight is the era in which this car came in the mid-50s. That was the years of the drive-in and having the drive-in tray and the side. You'd pull up to a drive-in that catered to the automobile. You didn't have to get out of your car in order to be served. They would bring out a tray. You would get your hamburger, fries, sundae, and the like, and you could eat it in your car. As you're looking at the emblem on the horn ring, it highlights the four areas that Henry J. Kaiser excelled in. On the upper left is the automobile, and the upper right are ships. And these are the two things we've already discussed, the Liberty boats. On the lower right-hand side is the Hoover Dam, which was an integral part. And the fourth area are, buildings and other things. Henry J. Kaiser in the late 50s, when he left the automobile business, went into building subdivisions and other building projects later on in his life. And those are the four areas of expertise that his companies had dealt with over the years. If you look at the dashboard, everything is neatly arranged in a circle or semicircle around the speedometer. Fuel, oil pressure, amperage, and coolant. This car is also equipped with an automatic transmission. The interesting part of this automatic is a hydromatic transmission made by General Motors. It is now in park. Even though the lever is in the reverse position when the engine is off, that's the park. So there was no separate park as most of us know in the cars that we own today. The dashboard is laid out very nicely. It's got a regular AM radio. The dash is a padded dash, something, again, that was very different in the early 50s. Cars just didn't come with padded dashboards. One of the more unusual options on this car are the large deluxe wheel covers, wire caps. It goes on the regular hubcap. There are just two screws, one on each side. It adds quite a bit of elegance to the automobile. Now, if you look at the air cleaner here, this is called an oil bath air cleaner. What they did is they had about an inch of oil in the bottom. Air would come in here and go down and come back around. The dirt would go straight into the oil and be held there. It was very, very effective, but it's environmentally not very good for the environment because people used to just take the oil and dump it out. So they kind of got away from that and went to paper filters. Another interesting addition that I put on the car is this canvas bag. And when, again, going across the desert, this goes with the air conditioner, you would fill this with water and it would seep water because it's tightly knit canvas. You would put it in the front by the airflow here. It would cool the air going into the radiator to help prevent the car from overheating when you're going through the desert.
I'm here with Weiss in this Packard Darren. It is gorgeous. I love the color.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, metallic blue, and that was pretty rare for that time of right before the war that you'd have metallic cars that were quite that bold. But original color to the car, and we're real pleased with how it came out. Really catches your eye.
Okay, what's the story? How did you find this car?
On Craigslist.
Okay.
No, it was a broker in St. Louis had the car, and I bought it. And it has a really interesting California history. It was owned by an industrialist in San Francisco who was the original owner, and he bought the car, and he used to go to the Mark Hopkins every day at the end of his workday for a little fortitude before he met his wife for dinner. And there was a young man who was a valet at the Mark Hopkins, and he would park the car for the gentleman. They got to know each other, and the young man really always loved the car and wanted to have it. He knew he couldn't afford it being a valet. And a couple of decades later, the young man became a very successful restaurateur in San Francisco. The original owner had died. He found the car from the family and bought it. So technically, I'm about the third owner. So that has a really great story. You know, American success story. Guy starts out broke, makes money, and buys his dream car. So there is the 42 Darren. And for each year, from 37 to 42, Darren made about 15 cars each. And towards the end of the run, right before the war, he had a contract with Packard to design a new car, which became the Packard Clipper. And Packard paid him $10,000 and gave him 10 days to come up with a new design. Well, that was a lot of money at the time. But in the meantime, they made each other's acquaintance, and they said, well, why are you buying these old Packards and you're chopping them up? Why don't we just make available to you the top of our line as a convertible, which has been reinforced and everything. So if you look at the cars, the 37s, 8s, and 9s, maybe some of the 40s were made by Central Manufacturing. The bodies are so flexible because there's no top, there's nothing holding it all together. You go around a corner too fast and the car would flex and the door would open. So these came a long way. These are real Packards, and he made some modifications, and we don't have running boards, and that swoop in the door is what's called the Darren swoop. And if you look at the hood line, a lot of his hoods are interestingly fitted to the cowls and the radiators, and so you can really tell one, even if it didn't have the Darren sign on it, I think you could tell that it was a Darren just because of the design cues on the car.
Well, can you show us some of these features?
We're looking at the engine compartment to the 42 Packard Darren, and you can see that it is a straight 8, 180 horsepower, and it also has an option which is this 3-trumpet horn. Basically, the car is very, very smooth running. Starts right up, the steering is easy. When you're driving it, you barely realize that it's a 60-something-year-old car. And this is the standard Packard grille, which I think is noticeable on any Packard, probably post-war and even pre-war. We have an acrylic hood ornament, and when we started to refurbish the car, it was all clouded, so we had it recast, and it is as good as new. The front of the 42s had horizontal louvers on either side of the radiator grille, where the earlier cars had vertical ones. So it's real easy to see a 42. You can see it and know in a minute that it's a 42 as opposed to an earlier model. The real important part about the 41s and 42s were that they were real Packards that were built as convertibles. So they have the infrastructure and the support to minimize the flex that the earlier ones didn't, that were chopped. So on this car, you go around a corner with somewhat comfort that the door will not go flying open. But on the earlier ones, where there was a lot of flex, it would actually flex enough that the latches would no longer hold and the door would fly open. You can see that the front windshield is raked to give it an aerodynamic look, and it's a double windshield, which was desirable at the time. The car looks very sleek, and It was described to me last night. It looks like a shark ready to pounce out of the ocean and take a big bite. Well, Darren didn't do much with the back. These are pretty much how all of the Packards of that era looked, the 180s. But you can see that it has a framed rear window as opposed to a Frenched. And again, that was an American style at the time.
I'm here with Toby Allison from the Nethercut. And what did you bring today?
1937 aerodynamic Cadillac V16.
Can you tell us a little bit about the history of it?
Yes, it was first ordered by a gentleman that didn't like the new 37 Cadillacs that were coming out at the time, so he asked to have this one special made for him. This was the last aerodynamic 90 series V16 built in 37 just for him. So this is the number 20. They built 20 of these cars. 8 of them were V16 chassis, and this was the last one built.
Can you give us a little closer up look at some of the features?
I'd just like to point out the torpedo headlights on this car and the gold-plated mascot and the big French-style pontoon fenders that are on this, humongous 154-inch wheelbase. This is the V16 Cadillac engine. This was restored in 1972. You could see these long, beautiful horns and the 16-cylinder distributor cap there with the wires all hidden going down the center underneath the sheet metal there. It's nicely finished and hidden and tucked away there. All the spark plugs are off the center and the inside of the cylinder heads, so you can't see all that. So looking down the side of the car, you can see how they've made it look very elegant, and it's got the fastback look to it. Yeah, I'd like to show the opening of the suicide doors that they had on this car back then. Well, inside here you can see the beautiful dash that they have. It also had a radio back then, and this radio does work indeed. It's a tube type. This is all original. Nice clock that's working right on time. You have the banjo style steering wheel. This is a very comfortable car, very nice back seat with the fold down armrest and the pull down shades for the back window. Another feature to this large car is a nice wing window, and you can simply open it by turning this knob. So here you can see the backside, how it comes down, making a nice fastback look to it, and having an enormous trunk. Takes 2 handles to lift it. It's such a huge door, just like the side doors, as you saw, are just so big.
I'm here with Fred Lax and this Cadillac behind us. Can you tell us a little about it here?
Sure, Betty. This is a 1931 Cadillac V16 Roadster. It was introduced at the 1930 World's Fair in January 1930 by Cadillac as the first V16 automobile from America. And this particular model is a Roadster, convertible with a rumble seat. And they built 109 of these between 1930 and 1931, of which only a handful, or maybe 10 at most, are still in existence today. So I'm very, very fortunate to have this vehicle.
How did you happen on this car, Fred?
Well, since a young boy, I always loved cars. I always wanted a Model T or something like that. And I had the fortunate opportunity 15 years ago and lived in the Midwest. Went into an automobile museum, and there were a couple cars on consignment, and I said, I got to have them. I didn't know anything about them. Now I know everything about it, and I've restored it completely to authentic specifications, and just enjoy it. It's a thrill.
It's really a gem. Can you show us some of the features?
I would be glad to show you some of the features. So as you can see, the front of the car is adorned with a lot of chrome and silver and a lot of ornaments that were really artwork at the time, with large headlights, dual horns, and even lights that articulate because they're connected to the steering drivetrain. And as you can see, the Cadillac is adorned with a coat ornament. It's called the Goddess. Each one is serial numbered, and it's a very well-known ornament for the Cadillac in the area of the 1930s. So why don't we go ahead and take a look at the engine. As I mentioned, this is a V16. It's got two banks of 8 cylinders. It's 452 cubic inches, riding on a chassis combined with the engine weight of about 5,500 pounds. It's a 3-speed, only 160 horse, but can reach miles of over 100 miles an hour. It's got dual carburetors, dual exhaust, dual intake, and a distributor cap that has 16 points in it. So wonderful, wonderful piece of artwork of the day from Cadillac in the 1930s. So let's take a quick look at the instrumentation in the interior of the cabin. As you can see, there's a dashboard that's basically got basic instruments for fuel, oil pressure, temperature, and ammeters. And with your typical spark and choke controls. But to start this particular vehicle, you need to turn the key on here, and then you need to press the starter pedal on the floor. The controls for the throttle and all the lights, the headlights, the parking lights, the high beams, the low beams, are all controlled by these knobs into the steering column with a fairly complex series of cables and tubes and levers inside the steering column to operate the electrical parts. In addition, there are 2 spotlights, left and right, with hand controls that you can operate and point in from either the passenger side or the driver's side. This is one of the spotlights on the passenger side that is hand controlled from the interior to be able to shine this light in any direction. Made by Cadillac, for Cadillac, with the Cadillac special emblem so that it's a very authentic piece. This is a fully retractable convertible top that folds back and sits on the trunk deck. In addition, the windshield in the front actually folds down and rests on the hood. So there's a complete convertible look to it. In addition, even with the convertible top up, if the driver and front passenger want to converse with the passengers in the rumble seat, the back window actually will fold up and clip to the top so that they can have a conversation. And further, for the gentlemen, there's even a place for the fedora hats that slip between these bands so that the gentlemen could carry their hats with them. These are built-in covers with storage area for the battery, for the storage box, and even notice the little detail that Cadillac had with the courtesy light that lights up when you open the door between the storage. Now, if we take a look inside one of these, and this particular one, it has the toolbox, and in the toolbox, you will see a number of tools, including a custom-made hubcap wrench to be able to take the hubcaps off these tires, the original crank that was used to start it, and of course the jack, as well as a number of hammers and screwdrivers and the original grease gun for greasing all the joints in this car. As I mentioned, this car has a rumble seat for 2 additional passengers, and to get into this rumble seat, there's actually 3 steps on the fenders. One here, and one here. Very delicate in the day in order to be able to get in because there's no handrails. But it was done. The rumble seat folds down as well. And in addition, these models had a golf club door where you could put your golf clubs in and carry your golf clubs around. So let's take a look at the back trunk. This is a very interesting option that Cadillac offered in the 1930s. This is known as a low boy trunk because it's not as high as some of the higher boy trunks, but it was especially made for the roadsters in that particular era. The trunk is built out of wood, skinned in metal, and then in this particular version, we have it covered in the same cloth material as the convertible top. In addition, inside the trunk are 3 suitcases. It's called a fitted suitcase suite with 2 suitcases and 1 hat box. I mentioned the gentleman's hats for the inside and the fedoras, but we have the suitcase for the ladies' hats in the back trunk. 2 suitcases that are completely removable and very well fitted. And that's how it's done. 3-piece fitted luggage in a lowboy trunk sitting on the Cadillac shelf.
I'm here with Todd Taricco and his Cadillac. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yes, this is a 1932 all-weather Phaeton V12 Cadillac. In the body styles in the Cadillacs, there's Phaetons, all-weather Phaetons, dual-cowl Phaetons. There's a whole myriad of the different bodies that were built by Fisher at the time. When Cadillac and Fisher were married up, Fisher was the coach builder, Cadillac was the frame builder. So there's many models and styles that could be purchased. And in the 1932 year, they built the V12 and the V16. Actually, more of the V16s were built. They were a larger car, slightly more expensive than the V12. That makes actually the V12 a rarer car. The standard Cadillac grille was fairly the same between the V16s and the V12s. There are various different lighting options as you've seen from the other cars. This would be your standard basic lighting package. One of the other features that they actually had the facility to allegedly be able to hand crank these engines. I don't know of anybody who's ever done it or if it's even possible. If you notice in the front suspension, everything is mechanical, including the brakes, including all of the suspension components. In addition, in this model year, they had ride control. So you can actually adjust the ride from firm, medium, and hard from the cabin. The standard Cadillac V12 used in the sedan models and most of the models is pretty much a basic engine. It's actually engineered as two 6-cylinders operating simultaneously. It's equipped with two sets of points, it's inside the distributor, which you can see over to the side. It's got two sets of rotors, two sets of points, two coils. So if you have a failure of a primary system, you operate as a 6-cylinder engine, not a 12-cylinder engine. That whole concept really didn't work out very well. When you do have one system failure, it backfires. It's really very unhappy, but it will still run. And this is indicative of the V12s and of the V16s. One other feature about the carburetor system is they're called Detroit lubricated updrafts. We believe the concept at the time was they didn't trust the carburetors not to leak fuel, so they drew the air up through the carburetor. So if they leaked fuel, they'd drain out onto the ground rather than into the engine. Until they felt more comfortable about downdraft carburetors, the period used a lot of updraft carburetors. And a lot of people ask about the hood ornament. There were various hood ornaments available. The most popular one at the time was the Flying Lady. In their engineering, basically the standard suicide door opens backwards, which is probably the primary reason that this was done is to only have to use one hinge assembly. So rather than have two pillars and two hinges, for what we would consider, you only have one hinge. As this was intended to be a chauffeur-driven car, and it is an all-weather Phaeton, the passengers and passenger compartment is equipped with leg rests. The portion of an all-weather Phaeton is when the center partition, which I'll wind up, is up and the top is down. These portions swing out to provide wind wings for wind protection from for the passengers. And courtesy lights. The dash of this model is relatively simple. Standard gauges, temperature, pressure, fuel. As you can see that this was intended to be a chauffeur-driven car, I will make an attempt to try to get in here. So it was intended to have a chauffeur that was built more like a jockey. Typically from this vintage, the wheels were spoked, and they really haven't been much of a problem. Once adjusted and set and locked, they tend not to be a problem. They are, of course, tubed tires, and they have all of the issues that tube tires have. From this period, this is normally where you would put your trunk. That's where the term trunk came from. The actual trunk is very small and holds the jacks and just service equipment.
I'm here with Todd Taricco, and he has another Cadillac here. Can you tell us about it?
Yes, it's a 1937 Cadillac rumple seat cabriolet, approximately 5 years older than the previous car we looked at. And you'll notice significant differences in automotive design and methodology that were incorporated in just a mere 5 years.
And it's a V8?
It is a V8, and as we look at the engine, you'll notice many, many differences where they've simplified things, they've changed the way things were done, and generally tried to make what we would consider a modern car.
Awesome. Can we have a closer-up look?
Sure we can. As you can see from the previous vehicle we looked at, Cadillac maintained a lot of the fender shaping. Grille shaping changed slightly, but many of the features visually look the same. Many things have changed in the suspension and in the engine. Some of the main features that they kept is running boards. They've kept the inability to make curved glass. So you have to either have flat pane glass or split glass. Things that were added that were not available is the introduction of wind wings that didn't exist in 1932. Pretty much visually, it's a more modern looking car, but it kept a lot of the aesthetic features. The Flying Lady changed from a more Gothic style to more Art Deco style. And in 1937, they've changed to this version of the Flying Lady. You'll notice many deco features that are built into this vehicle. A lot of the trim uses a lot of the Art Deco features that were becoming prevalent during the period. Moving on to the engine compartment, some of the major features that you notice from the other engine we just looked at is the change from the updraft carburetors to a downdraft carburetor. They finally got to trust themselves on not flooding the engine full of fuel. The engine changed to a flathead, which really became the backbone of the automotive industry for many, many years to come. The dashboard during this period was evolving into more of a modern dashboard, radio in the center. Cadillac, at this period of time, following the deco trend, if you notice the spokes in the steering wheel, it was following that trend during the period. And it was some of the first years that AM radios were installed in the vehicles. The AM radio weighs about 40 pounds, and it's about the size of a large lunchbox. These are 6-volt and utilize approximately 27 vacuum tubes. The signal transmissions during the period were also not very good and required very large antennas. Rather than the antennas as we're normally used to seeing coming out of the top of a vehicle, because of their size, they're mounted underneath the vehicle. During this period, more styling of the rear of the vehicles was attempted. In doing that, they added the rumple seat and then did add what we would consider a conventional trunk. And that is your quick tour of a 1937 Cadillac Cabriolet.
I'm here with Larry Bloomer and his Cadillac. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Well, we've had this car, my wife and I, Diane Bloomer and I, have had this car since 2004. And we've taken 3 Pebble Beach motoring tours in it. Each one of those is about 1,800 miles long. And we just finished one here in August again. So we shipped the car up to Kirkland, Washington, drove it to Pebble Beach, drove it around there on the Pebble Beach Concours rally, and then back to Los Angeles. So, and again, another 1,800 miles. The car has run perfectly.
Can we have a closer-up look?
Sure. This car sold for about $4,300 in 1934. At that time, you could buy a young Ford for about $800, so quite a spread between this Cadillac convertible coupe. This is called a 355D Cadillac 1934. Okay, well, some very important details about this car because it was made in 1934. 29, of course, was the big depression, and the General Motors was trying to find a way to sell cars. And they came up with this new design. They only made 30 of this particular model. There's 5 left and 2 restored, I'm told. But if you look at the bumpers, these are called biplane bumpers. And only 1934 Cadillacs had these biplane bumpers, which are intercepted here by these bullets, which are repeated throughout the car. So the headlights have these bullets, the taillights have bullets, and you see this repeatedly throughout the car. This is the first year that Cadillac had a sloping radiator grille. because before that they were pretty much straight up and down, like you see the car behind me here. They kind of repeated, went back that way in a way. But this is at an angle, and so that made a difference. And then if you begin to look at the side of the car over here, this is what they call kind of the torpedo fenders. It's got a shape that dies in the back. It's got compound curves here in front, but then it has this beautiful shape in the back that continues with the back fenders as well. And then they put, instead of having the tires in the back like they have had, they moved them to side mounts in the side fenders, so there's one on each side. This is a V8, and it's kind of different because they had both the 12 and the 16 cylinder Cadillac. So this, a little bit smaller engine. It's got a huge carburetor that's kind of hidden underneath this manifold. It's about like that, really, really big. The hood has got a way of helping to keep the cooling down, so all of these louvers on the side here are a bit flexible, so you can open them and close them depending on the kind of weather that you're having. Some unique features about this, because you see throughout, it's got this filigree in here, in the back of the mirror, and it's picked up in the door handles here on the side. And then this is called a suicide door, where the door actually opens in front instead of in back. This is kind of unique for that particular period of time. And the dashboard is very pretty as well. The dash is very typical of the Cadillac for the period. It's a 3-speed car, 3-speed on the floor. We have a side door here, which is for golf clubs. And this has also got a rumble seat, so this is special, where you can actually carry a couple extra people if you want. Back in the early 30s, they had high curbs. And so you could step off the curb onto this and onto this, and then open up the rumble seat and put your extra couple friends back there. The taillights I mentioned are copies of what's in front because they're a bullet shape, like you had in the front grille and in the headlights, and we have that same bullet shape here in the back to go along with this.
I'm here with Paul Colony and his beautiful red Ferrari. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
The 71 Daytona, back in the early 70s, it was the fastest car that you could buy that would be licensed to drive on the city streets. It would do about 175 miles an hour, and back in 71, that was fast.
It's still pretty fast.
It's still quite fast, and it's a wonderful car to rally, very, very powerful. It's a 12-cylinder car, and they made about 1,100 of these cars, and many of them are still around. They're a great rally car, and my wife and I enjoy driving it, and we've had it about 3-4 years, and we've probably put about 2,000 miles on the car. Most of it is highway driving or rallies.
I'm here with Paul Colony, and he's brought a second Ferrari to the Concours today. Can you tell us a little bit about this one?
This is a 1960 PF Coupe. The car was restored, as you see, in the early 80s, and as you walk around it, you almost would think it was restored sometime in the last 6 months. It's beautiful finish on it, the upholstery, everything under the hood is almost like the day it was manufactured. It's a 12-cylinder car. It's a GT car, which unlike the Daytona, it's not as much a race car, although the motor it has is used in cars that are actually raced.
I'm here with Carl Laski and this fire engine. How did you happen to get involved with this? Understand there's quite a history in your family.
Yes, there is actually. So this was the first fire engine of Lomita. It serviced the city of Lomita from about 1921 to 1925. It was actually volunteers, and the two volunteers were Charlie Smith and Hugo Schmidt. And one was a businessman and the other one was a butcher in town. So they went to fires in this. If it didn't start, they just backed a horse up to it, put the hitch over the front axle and towed it to the fire. So, but like I said, it served the community for that period of time. And when the city became bigger, then they started LA County Fire Department in about 1926. And my grandfather, Spike Frank Laski, was the first fire captain in Lomita. So he actually, this car, the fire engine was actually, when it went out of service, it sat. It was in a state of disrepair. And then the neighboring city, Walteria, actually borrowed it. Said, hey, we need to borrow a fire engine. Can we borrow your Model T? So they borrowed it. And then, I don't know, it was about after a year, the firemen in Alameda go, hey, let's go get our Model T back. And actually, when they went to go get it back, the story has it, it was 4 flat tires, and it really never been used. So they pulled it back to Alameda. It sat for quite a long time. My grandfather actually offered the deputy fire warden $25 for the Model T. He goes, hey, Charlie, I'll give you $25 for the Model T. So he acquired it. It sat, again, for quite a bit of period of time. He actually wound up giving it to my father, Tom Elton Laski, and he restored it for the first time when he got out of the Navy. It underwent a second restoration. It started around 1978 with a leaky radiator. He goes, what the heck, let's just tear it all down. So it was a frame-up restoration. Wow. For about 5 years. I didn't think the fire engine was ever going to go back together. By that time, my brother and I were both teenagers, and he had free child labor. And my brother and I did a lot of sandblasting and body work and wet sanding on it. So it was a team project. But my dad was just a perfectionist, you can tell. So he did a fantastic job.
Well, he brought it back to life, and you have it here at the Concours today. Can you give us a up-close and personal look of it?
Absolutely. If you notice, the Model Ts have the wooden spokes, and a lot of work goes into restoring those. I can recall scraping the old varnish off and sanding back and forth, and a lot of work goes into restoring those. Probably my least favorite thing on a Model T is to change a flat tire. They're not the easiest thing in my mind to do. When it's tuned up correctly, you can actually, let's pull the choke out in front, give it 3 half cranks, push the choke in, you turn the key over to battery, the coils fire, and sometimes you get a free crank. Well, here's the standard Model T Ford engine. It's 4-cylinder. It's very simple and easy to operate. And actually, this is the photograph taken of the Model T back in its volunteer days. And this is the actual 2 volunteers, Charlie Smith and Hugo Schmidt, sitting in the Model T. They actually housed the Model T between the community hall and the bank next door, and both of them agreed, okay, we'll let you build a roof over between our 2 buildings, and that's where they stored the Model T in its day. Here's the picture of my brother and my dad and myself. Around this age, we were out in the garage one day, and my dad smelled smoke, actually a grass fire. It's very distinct. And he turned to both of us, and he goes, would you guys like to go to a fire? And of course, we were just very excited, put on our helmets and turnout coats, and we actually pulled up to the intersection. He goes, okay, blow the siren. And when we pulled in behind the fire engine, my dad was an LA City fireman. It was actually Engine 85s from Harbor City that was putting out the grass fire. They're already there. So we pulled in behind Engine 85, and my dad looked to the engineer. He goes, hey, they knew each other since my dad was an LA City fireman. He goes, hey, do you mind if my boys put out some fire? He goes, absolutely. I'm about ready to get my hose burnt. So he goes, have them lay a line in there. So when my dad took the hose out of the basket, it's like a coil, and he handed it to us. And he did it on purpose. And he asked us, he goes, Mark, Carl, you ready? And he goes, yeah, Dad. And I was on the front of the nozzle. My brother's behind me. And he charged the line really fast, and I went flying one way, my brother went flying the other, and after he and the engineer got a good laugh, he straightened out the hose, gave it back to us, and kind of stood behind us and marched us in there to squirt out a little bit of fire. So I can actually say I've been to a real fire in this. This Model T fire engine, it's technically an American LaFrance double tank chemical car, because we know that Henry Ford wouldn't stop the entire production line and make a one-off fire engine, so they actually bought the Model T, and they ship it off to American LaFrance, and that's where they outfit it with the tanks and all the other extra equipment that you see. So one of them is probably the favorite one, and everyone, it's a hand crank siren. It actually works. And the bell, which I think has an absolute beautiful sound. What we have here is the 2 25-gallon tanks, and back in those days, we have to remember that the houses weren't as big. We didn't have high-rise buildings, so usually the 25 gallons or the 50 gallons total was enough to put out a fire. So the brass canister on the running board there hold the soda, and you put so much soda into the tank, and there was a cartridge that sit in there with acid. You put the lid on, and when you got to the fire, you pulled a pin down here. You use this handle right here to rotate the tank upside down, the soda and acid mix, and that's what pressurized it. So you'd use one tank first, close that one off, and then turn the other one over if you needed it. And if you didn't get the fire out with the both tanks, you just look at your neighbor that you know really well, because it was a small city back then, and you just tell them, "I'm sorry, we tried." So, but anyway, it's very simple, and it had to be because the volunteers, as I told you, were a businessman and a butcher in town, so they weren't professional and trained firemen, so it was very simple and easy for them to use. When we got old enough, prior to any parade or display, he handed us polishing rags, and my least favorite part of the whole fire engine to polish was the brass pipes back here, but when they're polished, they look absolutely fantastic. So it's a labor of love. I have a lot of fond memories in this car. I'm sitting behind the wheel now at the Palos Verdes Concours, and I've actually been in a lot of parades in this, but sitting in the hose basket in the back when I was small enough to fit back there. So I can remember being in a parade in Lomita, and that was special too, since this is the first fire engine of Lomita. But it was also nice to sit behind the seat that my dad drove for so long, and he was actually the only person that drove it for a decade. So until several years ago, I hadn't driven it, and so it's a fun car to drive. It has a lot of memory and history, and unfortunately the car sat for about 17 years. And so in about 2012, when we started to get it back to life and bring the brass up to speed, it was a lot of work, but it was worth it. And my main drive right now is to get the car out so people can see it. So that's what's rewarding. I did take the fire engine over to the Lomita Historical Society a couple years ago, and I actually had a chance to, after they had a chance to take pictures and ask questions. They presented me with a very nice storyboard, gave a little brief history of the fire engine and the picture of the two volunteers. I actually looked at it, the president of the club, and said, "Are we just going to stand around, or are we going to take this thing for a ride, start it up, take for a ride?" So I actually took several people of the Historical Society for a ride, and there was two relatives of Charlie Smith, who was a deputy fire warden, and that made it so special to me. And so they got to sit in the seat where Charlie sat. So they actually thanked me afterwards, and that's makes it very rewarding for me. I look at this will always be Dad's fire engine, and I'm just the driver, chief mechanic, and chief polisher. That's the way I look at it. And my brother Mark, I wish he were here to enjoy this with me. He lives in Phoenix, so it'd be nice to. And if Dad were here too, it would be special.
Thank you for watching Peninsula Seniors Out and About. I'm Betty Wheaton. See you next time.